is the emergence, as you pointed out, of the Buddhist extremist, basically. And as I said, the Buddhists that I've known haven't been like this. And this came from China. There was
You haven't read about the history of Vietnam.
What?
You haven't read the history of Vietnam if you think all Buddhists are all calm.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a big stereotype,
Yeah,
and it's not true.
probably not true.
Kind of like Christians are good.
Right, that's right, yeah.
Same difference.
Anyway, this started to foment the sectarian violence, the violence between the Buddhists, the Muslims, and the Christians. And as David pointed out, there are many descriptions of the poor Tamil people tortured, ill treatment. So, but what we have here is a civil war, as was our civil war, and the results of that. It's only been I think 10. It's been 10 years, 2009, and it seems like the anger and the impunity, the loss of the judiciary has occurred also in that period of time. Anyway, we have a president, Saracena. And he was elected in 2015. He was better than the previous guy whose name was, I've forgotten what it was, Wishnarian or something like that, basically. But by the it was Ricken Singhi, who was the previous president, who was made things worse. Supposedly, Saracena is trying to make things better, but the situation has become so worse. He actually dissolved the parliament just a few months ago, and you can see with the stage for. Oh, and also there was an attack on the Muslims because the Muslim refugees had mosques, and they were attacked. I think maybe 6 months ago, which leads me to think this is the important thing that caused this. What happened to the Catholics on Easter, even though they don't. None of that has been reported in the media that I know about. So anyway, there's to give you some idea of what it feels like to be. Is I'm just going to read you some, if I can get this, read you some things from the urgent action of Amnesty. First of all, 13 prisoners are at risk of imminent execution via the death penalty. There has been an epidemic of deaths of people in police custody. This is all stuff that I got off of Amnesty stuff. Police brutality is widespread, as are deaths. There's ongoing corruption and bribery. Frequent attacks of human rights defenders. This is kind of what we hear all the time in Amnesty. People, human rights in every country be defended. Journalist harassment. I already told you about the occupation of land by the military. And I also told you about the ethnic violence against the Muslims. There are 300,000 displaced civilians. And right at the beginning, you read that they are number one in the world in terms of people that have disappeared over the last 20 years, even more than Mexico.
Sri Lanka.
Yeah, I just take it off the web. I can't vouch if this is really correct or not. But you get the feeling, of trying to understand what happened to the Catholic Church, the feeling of violence and impunity, unbridled release of police. Very, very different from the Philippines, which is a strong man who's out of control.
Right.
This is the result of this civil war. And here we are here 150 years later, a civil war. We haven't resolved it, even though there haven't been killings that we know, certain things. It takes a long time. And certainly in Northern Ireland, after the Troubles, it emerges all the time. The violence, the result of the Civil War and the hatred, basically.
It almost makes you wonder whether multicultural societies can exist, you know? I mean,
Well,
it seems like so often they break down, it's so difficult to live in harmony, you know?
Yeah. China's a good
you have to be
example.
working on it all. Yeah.
But that's just anyway. I always think of Malaysia, where they have a mix of Chinese, indigenous people, and Indians, as far as I can remember, and they seem to coexist.
Well, it takes constant attention
Yeah,
to make it work.
This drawing. Oh, beautiful.
basically. Anyway, I'll read you the letter that Dear President Saracena. This has to do, with these youths. As I said, Amnesty has been involved in this since 2006, and I'm not sure why they picked this for Get on the Bus, because there's a lot of more recent stuff.
Do you want to draw something?
But anyway, I'm very concerned about the killing of Rogabar Manoharan and 4 other Sri Lankan Tamil youths in northeastern Sri Lanka. They had gathered for a chat near Trincomalee when a grenade was thrown at them from a passing auto rickshaw. The students ran, 3 were killed. Later, 10 to 15 officers arrived. They put the injured students in the Jeep, beat them, and then pushed them out on the road. Then they shot 5 of the students. This isn't so different from what David talks about in Mexico. The 5 students are known as the Trinco 5. And ever since, Amnesty has been doing things, and nothing's ever happened, just like in Mexico, basically. The families, they have waited too long to receive justice. I respectfully request that those responsible for these crimes be promptly prosecuted and held accountable, so that the family of the Trinco 5 students finally obtain justice, to help ensure that impunity will not be the norm in the future. That's the letter that I will ask you to sign near the end of this meeting. Anybody want to say something about Sri Lanka?
I wanted to ask questions. I hope they don't sound ignorant, but what you just told us, how does it tie in with what we're seeing in the news? There's a lack of communication between somebody didn't warn, the Prime Minister didn't warn. There was information, it wasn't